Chairs No Waiting, episode number 605. How do you spell Aunt B? Two Chairs No Waiting is brought to you each week by the folks over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. Check out some of the great Mayberry's finest coffee, bacon, jams, and pickles. That's right, we got Aunt B's Neat and Reverent Peach Jam. We got good old store-bought hamburger dill chip pickles and other things like that. So head over to weaversdepartmentstore.com and check out Mayberry's finest. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations from listeners like you. The executive producer of episode number 605 are Susan and Wynn Arnold. Thank you, Susan and Wynn. I'm Alan Newsome, your host for Two Chairs No Waiting, and it is great to be in Mayberry with you again. Oh, you've made it through since last week. If you listened to the podcast when it came out, you've made it through Halloween, and you've made it through a time change. And we even had a little earthquake near here where I'm from in Alabama. Can you believe that? On Halloween night, there was a little earthquake not too far from here. I didn't feel it, but I heard about it. So it's been an eventful week since I've seen you last, and it is great to be here in Mayberry where everything is as it should be. So we're going to be talking about how do you spell Aunt B? I was looking back through the archives and realized that I have never done a podcast devoted specifically to this topic. I have probably talked about it before, but I have never actually gone through and given the evidence to the correct answer to this question. Okay, so we're going to do that in today's, whenever you're listening to this podcast episode. And I thought it only fitting. Let's see if I can play this. This is a little Aunt B's music. There we go. Aunt B, just a little bit in the background as I go through this. And just so you'll know, we're also going to be hearing from Randy Turner with This Week in Mayberry History following up the podcast. So how do you spell Aunt B? Is it B-E-E or is it B-E-A? Oh, the controversy has gone on for quite some time, and I'm sure you've seen it. Let me just go ahead and tell you the correct spelling is B-E-E. I'm going to go through and give you reasons and show you this. The spelling can be seen in a couple of episodes, and if you're watching the podcast video version, I'm going to show you the pictures and things showing and proving what the correct spelling is. All right? But if you're not, I'm going to post that stuff online so that you'll be able to come and see it. All right? But there's a couple of episodes, or actually three different episodes, where it proves that she spelled it B-E-E. When she had her Chinese restaurant, we're going to see this later, in Aunt B's restaurant. That is the name of the episode. You can see it spelled out. You could also see it spelled out when she ran for town council, or ran for council. That was an episode called Politics Begin at Home. And then there was one other episode we'll talk about later when her cousin came to, Aunt B's cousin came to town. And the spelling can be seen on the closing credits of almost every episode. And I'm going to go through this a little bit more detail in a few minutes. But B-E-A is obviously short for Beatrice, which her name was Beatrice Taylor. But her name is still spelled B-E-E on the show. So as I said in the write-ups and the frequently asked questions section of mayberry.info. I guess if you can get Bill from the name William or Jim from the name James, you can certainly get B-E-E from Beatrice. All right, and that's Aunt B's music playing in the background there. So B is listed as a short form or a nickname for Beatrice. B is. In the name book, that's where expecting parents sometimes can look up their names of their children, things like that. All right, so it's controversial, and I understand that. So let's go on and talk a little bit about Frances Bavier. So Frances Bavier, who played Aunt B, I will 100% agree, because there's multiple photos online that you can see this is the case, that when she signed autographs as Aunt B, as that character, she signed them and would say things like affectionately Frances Bavier Aunt B, and she would spell it B-E-A. It says from the Andy Griffith Show. I got several references about that where you can actually see that she spelled it B-E-A. She definitely did. Frances did. There's no doubt that this is true. Okay? But that doesn't mean that the character on the Andy Griffith Show's name was spelled B-E-A. But I will 100% agree with anyone who asked that Frances Bavier did spell it B-E-A. All right? Okay, so let's give some background information, and we'll kill the music for the Aunt B music. It's just kind of sad sounding, isn't it? So the Beatrice is pronounced several different ways, which I realized. It's Beatrice, or Beatrice is the other one, and there's Beatrice, or Beatrice. So there's different ways of saying it. Now, the origin of the name Beatrice is derived from the Latin name Beatrix. It's B-E-A-T-R-I-X, Beatrix, which means she who makes happy or she who brings happiness. And boy, isn't that what Aunt B did on the show? Wow, I thought that was very nice. And it's a form of a name, and I don't know how to say it, but it's B-E-A-T-U-S, Beatus, which means happy and blessed. So that's where the origin of the name Beatrice came from. Okay, so I've done a lot of research on this, trying to make sure I could give you guys all the information. All right. So nicknames and variations of the name Beatrice, because remember it's from Beatrix. There are nicknames Trixie, B-E-A. There's a nickname Beat, B-E-A-T, I guess from Beatrice, B-E-A-T-R-I-C-E is Beat, B-E-A-T. And then there's Beatrice instead of Beatrice. There's Bice. I'd never heard that one before, but Bice is one. B-E-E is a nickname or a variation for the name Beatrice. There's Beata, B-E-A-T-A. There's Beatty, which I've heard that before, Beatty, and some people will say Betty, but Beatty was it. There's Bay, B-E-A-H. There's Trix, which was like Trixie, and Trixie, and anyway, there's a bunch of names for Beatrice. There are several different variations and nicknames for that name. Okay, and I looked all this up. You can look it up yourself and find the information. So as nicknames goes, B-E-E, as nicknames for Beatrice go, its ultimate simplicity is what that one is, right? And I didn't understand what that meant when I looked it up, but it's B. So somebody with a name that starts with a B, like Beatrice, you could just call them B. I never realized what it means because it said it's ultimate in simplicity. It's similar in nicknames to the nickname J for James, which I'd never heard of, or K for Catherine. I never realized why you would say K and Catherine, but it's the first letter of their name. How did I never know this? I don't know. But the first letter of the name, Beatrice, is B, B-E-E, right? J for James is just the first letter. I'm slow. I never realized this. I'm sure all of you did, but I never realized that was what was going on there. I'm sorry. I can't believe I never realized that. Some of the other names I should have mentioned too. There's like Birdie for Beatrice. There's the name, like I said, Bay, which I don't understand where that came from. B-A-Y, Bay. There's so many. And BB, B-E-B-E, or B-I-B-I, BB is another nickname that works for Beatrice. I just didn't realize. So I also didn't realize that Elizabeth, a short name for Elizabeth, is L, or Ellie, right? Well, that's because her name is, it's E-L. It's E-L, or Eleanor, Ellie, also for Eleanor. So anyway, the short names like J for James, K for Catherine, or Ellie for Elizabeth or Eleanor. That's where B comes from. B, Beatrice. I just can't believe I never thought of this before. All right. So those are some reasons why it's spelled B-E-E. Okay. So that's giving you the definitions. You can go and look out all over the place that tells you that is a variation or a nickname for the name Beatrice. So Beatrice Taylor is B-E-E. Now, for the proof, on the beginning of the episodes, when it actually does list also starring Frances Bavier, with Frances Bavier, as it'll say Aunt B at the bottom, and it's spelled B-E-E. This is the beginning of an episode of the Andy Griffith Show. It shows you how B is spelled. In the closing credits, you can see the same thing. Cast, Frances Bavier, Aunt B, B-E-E. It's spelled right there. All right, so I realize people still are not accepting this. So now we're getting into the episodes themselves. So in episode number 197 aired, that's from season 7 of the Andy Griffith Show, she was running for council. It's called Politics Begins at Home. Or it may be Begin. I think I spelled that wrong. But Politics Begin at Home is the name of the episode. And it was, you can see in several different screenshots, you can go and look, it says Miss B. Taylor for progressive government. B. Taylor, beautify Mayberry. There's signs hanging on her house. There's a giant pink sign that says Politics Begins at Home. And that there's a giant, that's the name of the episode, a giant pink sign in that episode that says B. Taylor for City Council. It's across the entire front porch of the Taylor's house. I know you don't believe me, but I promise. That's what it looks like. I'm going to post these things online. They'll be in our show notes, a link to a file that'll have all this information that you can start beating people over the head with so they'll know how to spell Aunt B. I don't know if it'll help. But okay, so that's one episode. So that's from season 7. It's the 197th episode aired of the Andy Griffith Show. All right, so now let's go on to the next episode that I picked up from. It's Aunt B's Restaurant, and that's also from season 7, and it's the 210th episode aired when she had Aunt B's Restaurant, and the name of the restaurant is painted on the front in paint in red, says Aunt B's, B-E-E-S, B's Canton Palace. So it's painted on the front of her restaurant in the episode Aunt B's Restaurant, Aunt B's Canton Palace. Okay. That's episode number 210. Then we move on. Another episode. This is from season 8. It's called Aunt B's Cousin. Now, this is when Bradford Taylor was coming to town. You remember when he was coming to town? It's season 8. The episode number is 232. That's in aired order. There's a filmed order and an aired order. So I'm going with aired in this case, but you can look it up either way. She sent out invitations to people to get them to come to a reception in honor of Bradford J. Taylor. And it says, Miss B. Taylor requests the pleasure of your company at the reception in honor of her cousin. It spells it out. You can read it. Miss B. B-E-E Taylor. Okay, so you can see all these. These are on the episodes themselves. All right. So how do you spell Aunt B? Andy's aunt, who raised him in Mayberry, is named Aunt B with the spelling B-E-E. Frances Bavier certainly did spell the name B-E-A when autographing photos. However, the scripts for the Andy Griffith Show spell the name B-E-E, and it's unknown why Frances chose to spell the character's name differently when she signed her autographs. I don't know why. Now, that's something we could try to find out, but I don't know the answer. And even further, because I don't know who actually purchased and created it, but the tombstone for Frances Bavier in her gravesite, it says Frances E. Bavier, Aunt B is what it says, and it is spelled B-E-E on her tombstone. Okay, so there you go. If this doesn't kind of lay this to rest, at least for the people who listen to the podcast or who have this PDF document I'm going to put together for you and give to you in our show notes. So go to the show notes and you can get it. The correct spelling is B-E-E. Whew, boy. So soapbox, I'm getting off the soapbox at this point. The reason I bring this up is because there are arguments on Facebook and other places on the internet that I see fairly often where people spell the name incorrectly as B-E-A. And then people get upset about it because people that are, big fans, they all, oh, no, it's B-E-E. And then there's a big argument, but it's Beatrice. It's not B-E-A. So now we got this official verification, this document, that maybe nobody will care or maybe nobody will, they won't accept it even so. But at least we're going to have this podcast episode that you can share the video version. They can go and watch it if they care. Anyway. All right. So I think I've heard just about enough about that tomato. So let's go and hear from Randy Turner with This Week in Mayberry History.
Welcome to This Week in Mayberry History, a report by Special Correspondent Randy Turner of the Gomer and Cooper Pyle Comic Book Literary Guild of the Mayberry Historical Society.
In celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Andy Griffith Show's debut, this week we continue to discuss how No Time for Sergeants led to Andy being so well known. We'll look at the first half of the next iteration of Sergeants in this week's installment. While the televised version of Sergeants was broadcast live, the producer of the planned Broadway version watched some of the rehearsals. That producer, by the way, was actor Maurice Evans, familiar to many as Samantha Stevens' father in Bewitched. While Andy has said it took a while for him to build up to the portrayal that was finally seen during the live broadcast, Evans was already impressed enough that he decided then and there Andy would play the role on Broadway as well. The success Andy had enjoyed with his comedy records and the U.S. Steel Hour version of No Time for Sergeants were important steps to him being widely known, but his fame was not finished growing. The Broadway version of Sergeants was not hamstrung by such a short viewing time as the TV broadcast version had been, so writer Ira Levin was able to include the entire storyline from the book instead of having to stop 2/3 of the way through like he did in the TV version. The Broadway version opened on October the 20th, 1955, just 7 months after the TV version. While the play included events from the entire book, it also included new bookend scenes, which helped incorporate the same breaking of the fourth wall that was used in the TV version. The audience in New York's Alvin Theater that night first saw a scene set in the Township Hall in Colville, Georgia, and were first spoken to by a character who was a preacher in Will Stockdale's hometown. The conceit was that Will had come back to Colville to tell locals how he got a medal during his time in the Air Force. Thus, after the preacher introduced Will, Andy's character walked on stage and spoke directly to the audience as if they were townspeople in Colville. The play still had to show the events Will was describing. For example, he is first in uniform while speaking to the audience after he's been introduced by the preacher. But after the lights come up, revealing his cabin and his paw, as he walks toward the cabin porch on stage, he removes his tie and explains to the audience, "I weren't in uniform then." He then unbuttons his shirt and drops it in the tie, leaving him in khakis and an undershirt for the scene. The play also adds an element that Will admires a wristwatch worn by Sergeant King, and that the sergeant promises to give him the watch if he can only get classified by the end of the week. But again, for the most part, The first act of the Broadway play is close to Levin's earlier script for the United States Steel Hour, with two notable exceptions. The first exception involves the eyesight gag, which convinces King that Will has failed his eye test. The play returns to the novel's version of Will seeing a black officer instead of the woman who had been substituted in the televised version. The play does soften Will's language from that used in the novel. After Will's buddy Ben explains, "But when a man's in uniform, he ain't black or white or yellow or nothing. You ain't supposed to notice the color of a man in uniform." Will responds, "Ben, you mean when that lieutenant came over, you didn't notice he was, is it all right if I say colored?" Later, when Will again encounters the black officer, he salutes and says it was nice being there and he'll miss them when he's classified. Irvin, the character Will had earlier thought had been sick because he had ROTC for a full year, soon criticizes Will for being so polite. The less likable Irvin uses the N-word to describe the officer. Will responds, "Was he colored? I didn't notice." This leads King to be sure Will was colorblind and must have failed the eye test, restoring the gag as it had originally been presented in the book. Believing that Will would not be classified, Sergeant King and Irvin later try unsuccessfully to get Will drunk to try to sabotage the private. Sergeant King gives Will the watch he so admired in order to keep him drinking. Later that evening, in the next scene, we come to the second exception. Just like in the novel, the saluting toilet bowl lids are restored in the play after not being used in the TV version. When Sergeant King stumbles in at this point and is stripped of his stripes, unlike the televised version, Sergeant King tells Will he is not his friend and has Ben explain, "Cleaning the latrine isn't a good job, Will. It's the worst job there is. It's a punishment job." Realizing the truth, Will returns King's watch. This concluded Act 1 of the play. Though changes were made, the basic story told in the entire televised version makes up only the first act of the Broadway play. Next week, we'll look at Act 2 of the play, the next step on Andy Griffith's path to becoming a more widely known public figure. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks for listening. And remember to stay safe, watch out for one another, and take Andy's advice, and go out there and act like somebody.
Wow, thank you, Randy. And if you want to make sure you don't miss out on any of the great things that Randy's finding and reporting on about the Andy Griffith Show, send him an email at turnersgrade@gmail.com, turnersgrade@gmail.com, and he'll make sure you don't miss out on any of the fun. Because, wow, that's fun. I didn't know. I had no idea that Maurice Evans had anything to do with the play for No Time for Sergeants. Isn't that? Now, I remember him from Bewitched. That's who he's talking about as Samantha's dad on Bewitched. So there's another connection there with Bewitched, Dr. Bombay. And I guess if you go indirectly, it's an Andy Griffith connection to Bewitched with the No Time for Sergeants, the play. So that was really interesting information. And it's interesting too to me that they added and removed scenes in the play versus, I understand the TV broadcast that they did. They had to get it down to less than an hour. With the play, I'm surprised that they were able to add more things to that. That's really interesting. So Randy, thank you. I don't know how you know some of these things, and it's great. So thank you for all the research and time that you spend. I hope you guys are all enjoying that. Randy does a lot of work for us here in Mayberry just to keep us, keep that Mayberry information fix coming toward us so often. Do make sure you send him an email if you'd like to keep up at turnersgrade@gmail.com. Wow, folks, that is what I have for you this week for Two Chairs No Waiting. In the chat room, Rascal said that I had a bee in my bonnet because I was telling that story about Aunt Bee and how you spell it. So I have a bee in my bonnet. Floyd has a bee in his bonnet. That's what he said. I thought, hey, that's clever. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. Oh, so folks, we've had some really neat stuff, just so you'll be aware. The Mayberry Effect. I don't know if you guys remember about the Mayberry Effect, the documentary film that has been being worked by Chris Hudson for quite some time now. It has been receiving all kinds of honors at Mayberry, or not Mayberry, at film festivals. If you go to the mayberryeffect.com, you'll see all kinds of, I don't know what they're called, but they're like little tags that show you all the film festivals he's been in. He's been finalist, award winners at different film festivals, and he's up to 25 now that he's been honored in some way as either being a finalist or an official selection or actual award winner for the Mayberry Effect documentary. Now, we're looking forward to it. I'm hearing that it might be sometime after the first of the year, 2021, when the Mayberry Effect may become available for us to actually be able to get or see or watch or something. So we'll be able to see it. I got to see it it seems like last year. Last March, I think it was. I believe, yeah, it was in March. We get to go to the George Lindsay Film Festival. I believe I told you guys about this, and got to see the documentary, the movie, the film there. So we've got that to look forward to, the Mayberry Effect, and then of course we have Mayberry Man, the movie, that's also going to be coming out next year in 2021. We're going to have two big Mayberry things. So we have the documentary, which is a look at kind of the nostalgia that causes folks to want to watch the Andy Griffith Show and be a part of all the Mayberry gatherings and stuff that go on. So we're going to have that coming out in early 2021. And then maybe a few months later, we'll be able to see the Mayberry Man movie that'll be coming out somewhere around May, maybe hopefully around that time frame. Folks, we just got a lot of stuff to be looking forward to. I'm so excited about both of these. So this is like, it's getting close. We're going to be able to see these things. And I'm just excited for Chris, for the hard work that he's done. And I hope he gets rewarded well for all the work. And I know you're going to enjoy them. They're asking in the chat room if I'm in the Mayberry Effect movie. I am in the Mayberry Effect. There's a podcast episode I did a while back. If you go and look for it, called Nostalgia. It's kind of partially glues the documentary together. So I'm in it as me mostly, not as Floyd. So, and then the Mayberry Man movie, I'm in as Floyd mostly and not as me. So, so I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a good year next year. Getting to see these new movies, these things that are just going to add to the Mayberry overall feel that we can just be involved in. We get some new Mayberry stuff, guys. It's going to be great. So, and as long as we're talking about new Mayberry stuff, I already talked about it, but head over to Weaver's Department Store and go to the Mayberry's Finest section. There are all kind of really cool Mayberry things there for food. If you enjoy eating, they got, of course, we've had the country ham country bacon for quite a while. And now we have good old store-bought hamburger dill pickles. We have strawberry jam, peach jam, and blackberry jam to go along with the coffee. So, man, you can have breakfast. So head over to Weaver's Department Store and check that out. That's a free advertisement for Weaver's. Yeah, so because I actually, it's good. I really like it. It's all good. I've tasted it all, and it's good. So go for it. Feel free to head over to Weaver's and check that out. There's several other new things over at Weaver's. It's getting close to Christmas time. You need to get things ordered because to get it there in time for everybody, I hate to be pushing things early, but it's you got to get you over there and get your stuff at Weaver's so that you can get it delivered on time for Christmas for yourself. So if it's for you, make sure you tell the people in your family, hey, they need to go order this. Or if it's for other people, you need to get it ordered so that they'll get it in time. Friends, man, I'm excited about the Mayberry stuff that's coming up. I hope you are too. I'm always excited to be here in Mayberry with you and spend just some time talking about the Andy Griffith Show and all the things we love. I'd love to hear from you. You can give me a call at 888-684-8415 or email me at floyd@imayberry.com or just drop by twochairsnowaiting.com and you'll find a way to talk to me from there. Folks, it's great again to be back in Mayberry. Here we are heading into Thanksgiving month. So let's enjoy it and have a great Mayberry week. And we'll see you next time right here on Two Chairs. Bye, everybody.